If you're watching this video, you're going to learn three big things. Number one, how an early Bitcoiner in 2013 read the white paper and got some conviction fast.
Number two, what the Bitcoin block wars were and why Bitcoin Cash split off.
And number three, what happens to your coins if Bitcoin ever splits again?
Today's guest is Jeremy, host of the Bitcoin Cash podcast.
So if you're brand new to Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, head on inside the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center for today's show with my boy co-hosting. Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So, if you are brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you for real. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. Literally anybody. I'm your host, Stuart.
I'm your co-host, Lion.
Yeah, and what's your number, Deeps?
I'm number 38, guys.
Number 38. And what's this guy's number?
This is number 168, Jeremy.
Number 168. 130 episodes after this guy showed up for the first time. Jeremy, welcome to the show. Take us back to the very beginning of your Bitcoin story, which for, the Senor Gringo Poppies in the audience that are listening, does include Bitcoin Cash, everybody. All right. So if you're a toxic Bitcoin maxi, don't click away just yet. This guy has a point he wants to make. And if you're my mom, this is going to be kind of an interesting journey into more of this whole history, right?
Just a quick question. If you already had 187 people, how does he become 168?
Well, he's guest number 168, but he's episode number 100 and something or other, because we've had guests, they come back for their Bitcoin baby update.
Oh.
So it adds an episode to our list, but they don't get a new number. You'll always be number 168 Jeremy on this show, right? And we do ask everyone to come back in 9 months to give us an update. So he'll still be number 168, but it could be episode like 270 by then.
Oh.
See what I'm saying?
Cool beans.
So the numbers on the wall, they got dislocated the moment we had our very first Bitcoin baby update come back, right?
Cool.
Which was number 12 Jack. He was the first guy to come back. All right. Just in case you guys are taking notes for this Friday's live game show, now I get to ask that question, okay? That's going to trip people up. Jeremy, take us back to the beginning here, brother. You told me before we started, you're like an OG from 2013. Take us all the way back there and let's hear your story, brother.
Yeah, so I got into Bitcoin because I was upstairs at my friend's place and he's a bit of a, free thinking kind of guy. And he said to me, Jeremy, did you hear that the price of Bitcoin crashed? And I didn't even say, what's Bitcoin? I said, why'd it crash? And he said, because the government took down the Silk Road drug market website online. And so the price of Bitcoin crashed. And I said, brilliant, let's buy some. Because my theory was, just off that amount of information, that if the price of Bitcoin had gone down because of a website being seized, somebody would put up another website and the price would go back up. So I instantly was open-minded to Bitcoin. I never had any period, a lot of people are on a very long journey to understanding Bitcoin. But for me, it just made sense intuitively, instantly. And because we had that conversation, the price of Bitcoin, it was in about $100 range. And it was in the back of my mind, but I didn't get around to looking into it until several months later when I read the Bitcoin white paper, because I thought, I remember this thing. Let me look into it. Sounds interesting. I wonder if the price went back up. And I read the white paper, which was online. And I instantly was like, this is going to be the global reserve currency. It's going to replace all money everywhere. Like, I was already a computer programmer at that time, so I understood that technically it could work. The white paper isn't fully technical. Like you can read it and get the concept. For anybody who hasn't, I recommend it. But the technical elements I could understand. The economic elements also just made sense to me. Not that I had any great background in economics, but it made sense to me that a limited supply currency would be more effective. And if there was no government involved, of course, it would be more efficient. So I spent about a day or two, I think, thinking about what could stop Bitcoin and concluded that nothing could because it was open source. So if anybody ever found a way to screw it up somehow, then somebody else could just launch a new version or make a tweak or whatever fix they needed to do and keep the system going. And so once I landed on that conclusion, I just became an advocate telling everyone pretty much that I could that Bitcoin was going to be the global reserve currency and they should get interested in it. Of course, at that time, that was mostly mocked, ridiculed, ignored, and so forth. But, you know, I've been vindicated in hindsight, so that's always nice.
And that was 2013?
Yeah, so when my friend talked to me, I think it was July 2013. It was just after the Silk Road got shut down, and then I started getting into it in September.
Okay. And you said it was about $100 per Bitcoin at the time.
Yes. Yeah, maybe a little more.
I mean, $100 per Bitcoin, Lion. 100 right now it's $87,827.
That's a lot of. You could get a ton of Bitcoin.
Like, are you saying if you bought $87,000 worth of Bitcoin at $100 per Bitcoin,
you would have a ton of Bitcoin?
Yeah. I mean, you would have what? What's 87,000 divided by 100? POV. Let's see if 7th grade math is working out.
Can you repeat the problem, sir?
87,000 divided by 100.
You would have 8,700.
Oh, no.
Nearly.
That would be 87,000 divided by 10. Right? So take off 2 zeros from the 87,000 to get a division by 100.
You would get 870.
870 Bitcoin.
And now that's worth.
That would be, each of those would be worth 87,000. You'd be chilling.
Yeah.
You would be chilling. Unlimited
Ton of
Legos.
money.
Unlimited
That would be a ton
Legos.
of money.
Yeah. So, what about reading the white paper, made you feel like this is going to be the world's global reserve currency? I mean, you mentioned a little bit that Bitcoin is an open source project, so it's not really like anybody can kind of hack into it and change it. They would simply just be making a change that other people can respect or not respect, or people could fix it, roll it back, whatever. Like, it does make it very resilient, but were there any other aspects of Bitcoin that kind of made you feel that way? Like, hey, because that's how I feel, right? Like after I found Bitcoin in January of 2024, truly, like, it wasn't the first time I had heard about it. It was the first time that, like, I actually looked at it and saw it, read the white paper, did my own research, and I was like, this is it. Like, it is inevitable. It's over. It's already happened. It just hasn't happened yet. So did you, what about Bitcoin kind of made you feel that way?
Well, I guess now they call it everything divided by 21 million. But at the time, that phrase hadn't been invented. And I guess I would just put it that I understood the incentive system. I knew that if it was a limited supply commodity, which was more transactable as a medium of exchange on a daily basis, then the incentive is for somebody to acquire some, which by that time they already had because the price was in the hundreds, and that as more people acquired it, it became a better money, and it also became more noticeable. It became more promoted. It became more hyped, like we're talking about. As soon as the price of Bitcoin goes up, that's what the greatest marketing Bitcoin has ever had, has always been the price going up and more people eventually realizing, what am I missing here? There must be something going on. And greed is a very reliable human emotion, right? It's also very universal. So because I understood that principle, I could see that the train was already rolling and it would keep rolling. And I couldn't see any point at which it would be diverted, like I said, until it just swallowed everything in the global economy, except for some kind of unforeseen issue, you know, like a technological issue or the invention of maybe something better than Bitcoin. But I thought, well, that's fine. People will just update Bitcoin. It's a flexible, organic, evolving system. So yeah, a combination of the technical open source resilience and the economic incentives. Just to me, it was like obvious that it would just take over.
That right there about we'll just upgrade it. We had another episode. I think it was with, it was the guy from the Hash Power Academy channel. And he's a super smart dude. And he talked about how Bitcoin is like Minecraft because Minecraft is the game. And they already figured out how to make this amazing world for you to explore and create and change. There isn't a second Minecraft that is better than Minecraft. There are simply updates to Minecraft. Like that is the game. And I think he pointed out that Roblox has attempted to try to be a better Minecraft. It isn't.
There's like Bobo like versions of Minecraft and Roblox, but they're not good.
But they're not good.
And there's other random versions of Minecraft, but again, they're not good.
Right. So
Minecraft itself has made other games under Minecraft, like Minecraft Dungeons, Minecraft Legends.
yeah.
But there's still Minecraft.
Like Minecraft is the breakthrough and we just update it and add to it and make it better. Bitcoin is the breakthrough. Same deal there. Now you must have gone a couple of years, Jeremy, between 2013 up to the block wars where, you know, Bitcoin, BTC, as it were, was the only Bitcoin around, correct? It was the only form of Bitcoin.
Yes.
So what was it like for you to go through those years? Did you continue to stack sats? Did it do anything to your life? Like, if I'm a brand new Bitcoiner tuning into this episode, what can I expect those first few years of my life as a Bitcoiner to be like?
Well, I think for a new Bitcoiner joining now, it would be completely different to how it was then. Now you can get into Bitcoin. There's shows like yours, which are really helping to onboard. Of course, there was Bitcoin podcasts and there was a couple of small things. There was the Bitcoin Talk forum. There was our Bitcoin on Reddit, but there was very little information about Bitcoin full stop. And the community was absolutely fragmented and tiny all around the world. So it's not like there was Bitcoin meetups in my city or even anywhere in Australia, as far as I'm aware. There probably was, but if there was, I didn't know how to find it. So at the time, it was actually quite isolating. All of my interaction with Bitcoin was online. I was just in Canberra in Australia. You know, I'm in a smallish city in the corner of the world. So I didn't have anybody to meet up with and talk to, and the quality of information was much lower than it is now. So all of my Bitcoining was all online. I didn't meet another person that was into Bitcoin that I hadn't introduced to it for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years probably, actually. So it was it was purely just an online thing for me. But at the time, yeah, it was sort of confusing to other people. I would try and tell them and explain it to them, and they would say, like, what is that? And then even getting someone over the hurdle of the concept of there is a new form of money that nobody can control, that was like not an idea. Now people understand the idea. There's Bitcoin, there's maybe other cryptocurrencies. They understand that it's a running and a viable system. But at the time, they were just like, I've never heard of this. I don't think it's real. And if it is, it's going to get shut down or die or go away somehow. And they just tried to push away from it. So all of my Bitcoin discussion had to be with Bitcoiners online, basically. Yeah.
Could you imagine that line, being really interested in something and literally meeting nobody in real life for 6 to 7 years that you can share that with?
Not really.
That would be a lonely type of place to be, right? So thank goodness for the internet. It does help people connect where they wouldn't otherwise be able to. So what happened during the block wars? Maybe, I mean, I don't really think we've ever spoken about the block wars on this show because we're so focused on welcoming in brand new Bitcoiners, that it's more about saying, hey guys, you're safe. It's okay. Stacking sats is the solution. Just keep at it. All right, it's going up and down. We get it. It's going to be okay over the long run. Here's where you can go get some Bitcoin. Here's how you can start thinking about taking it into your own hands instead of leaving it with someone else. Like, we haven't really gone over the block wars per se, I don't think, on this show. So I think this is going to be pivotal to your story because you do end up converting from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash. Maybe you can explain to Lion and to our satillionaires in the audience, what were the block wars and how did that create Bitcoin Cash, and why did you decide that it was superior to Bitcoin?
Yes, so it's a very long and complicated story, but to break it down, in the early days, Bitcoin was, of course, a united community and everybody was very excited about it, much as you're familiar with now. But relative to today, of course, there was not as much history. Things hadn't been as well decided. Everything was kind of very scrappy and disjointed. There wasn't a known process for how a lot of things would work. And so, of course, at a certain point, as the community was growing, there came to be a disagreement within the Bitcoin community itself, which started off as very, very united because everybody thought, wow, this is a fantastic, amazing new thing. And like I said, there might not be that many other Bitcoiners total, so you couldn't really afford to fight with the ones that there were. But everybody was on this mission to spread Bitcoin to be the global reserve currency until there came essentially a civil war within Bitcoin. Of the Bitcoiners at the time, there came to be a disagreement about how to continue the Bitcoin project going forward. Now, the specific issue was about the 1 megabyte block size limit that you're probably familiar with, or listeners to the show can understand is a limit on the throughput to Bitcoin at this what is now called the base layer. And the one side in the community thought that capacity should be increased. If you're going to have more people on Bitcoin, you're going to need more capacity so that you can have more people transacting. Just like if you have more cars on a road, eventually you need to build another road so that you can have more traffic flowing through it. Like that's like the growth in a city, right? You need extra infrastructure to accommodate more citizens in a growing city, in the same way for Bitcoin's block size and the amount of traffic on the network. And originally that was the overwhelmingly popular view. But what the block size war was a civil war between people who believed that original plan should be continued and people who thought that, for a variety of reasons, I'm not the world's best advocate, but I'll try and argue for the side that I don't believe in, for a variety of reasons, believed that was not a prudent thing to do and the block size should not be raised, that there should be another way found to incorporate more Bitcoiners into the growing movement. Now, from my point of view, a key element to the story is that it was not just an organic disagreement. Like I said, everyone started off, for the most part, or overwhelmingly, believing this idea that you should simply raise the block size. But the opinion changed over time because there was very heavy censorship and propaganda introduced into Bitcoin forums online to sway opinion. So you might be familiar with, like, recently we had the COVID pandemic, right? And especially Bitcoiner types understand the idea that people who were hesitant or against taking the vaccines had their reach de-amplified, right? They were suppressed because the mainstream media had a narrative that everybody needed to get vaccinated. So whether you agree or disagree with that concept, people understand the idea that one side had its thumb on the scales via the media channels. And the same thing happened in the Bitcoin community. So this debate about what to do over Bitcoin was heavily influenced by censorship and changes to the algorithm and so forth in the most popular spaces for Bitcoin discussion, which of course made the problem even worse because the Bitcoin community at that time didn't know the right answer to scaling. It also didn't know how to decide, like there's no Bitcoin government, there's no Bitcoin leadership explicitly, right? So people were trying to figure out, how do we figure out how to make changes? And even further, it was being clearly disrupted by outside forces to prevent people coming to an agreement. So this period between about 2015 to 2017 is generally agreed as the main window of time during which this happened, because the community was still growing while this contention and arguing was happening. So at the same time as you have people arguing over the solution, you have new people coming into the discussion who are only hearing, at least in some cases, one side of the story or the other, and then they are further inflaming the issue because they, just like any political disagreement, they then pick a side or they have a preferred view and they start advocating for that. So initially, the more popular view was to raise the Bitcoin block size, but by the time things had come to 2017, the growing community, under a variety of propaganda and suppression, had changed, because there was so many new people arriving that had only heard or were more convinced, I guess to put it charitably, that we should not raise the block size. So eventually what it came to, after much arguing and back and forth, was that a segment of the Bitcoin community decided that there was never going to be any compromise or any ability to move forward on this, and they essentially had to take matters into their own hands. So what were called big blockers at the time, people who wanted to preserve the original scaling plan and raise the 1 megabyte limit, created a chain split where, because Bitcoin is just a digital ledger, they created a second copy of the ledger starting at the same point. It was on August the 1st, 2017. And from then there was dispute about which is the real Bitcoin. Now, of course, history has been written and most people believe that BTC is Bitcoin. They understand the orange logo and the branding and so forth, and that's how they think about it. But at the time, it was the same as, like I said before the show, with North and South Korea splitting into two countries. People on both sides of the border believed that they were in the real Korea, and both, still to this day, those two Koreas are at war. And in the same way, BCH and BTC are now two separate projects, and it's now been more than a decade, or, it's 8 years later and it's coming up to a decade. So the two are very, very different by this point, but they will always share that original origin, like two twins from the same mother kind of an idea.
So let's summarize that.
That's a lot.
That was a lot. So what Jeremy is saying, Lion, is that at one point in Bitcoin's history, you had this problem, which is, okay, Bitcoin itself was developed to be secure. It's super secure. You know, if you want to shut it down, where is it, right? It's on a schmillion computers worldwide. It's on satellites in outer space. Like, good luck, homie, right? Like, it's chop off one head, there's 19,999 other ones.
Or you could just disable Wi-Fi for the entire world and then confiscate all computers, destroy them all. Bitcoin is gone.
Even that wouldn't work, actually. Interestingly, Bitcoin can be transmitted by any information medium. You can mine Bitcoin on paper using a pen and paper. It would be very slow, but you could do it. You can also send Bitcoin over radio waves or any other kind of written form, anything.
Yeah, like Bluetooth, you could send it. Ham radios, you can mine on you cannot destroy Bitcoin.
Yeah, you can. You can just destroy the human race and every human being capable of solving the intense problems of Bitcoin. Just destroy them all.
I think some aliens would come through, pick up a stray ham radio signal. They'd be like, "Dog, what's this? Oh my God, it's Bitcoin." They'd grab a copy of the ledger and then they would keep rolling with it.
And then I would find them and I would.
You would be dead because they already destroyed the entire human race a second ago, right? In your scenario,
I would keep myself alive.
He would keep himself alive, folks.
And then
it's gonna be lonely.
Satoshi and
Satoshi would be, unless you're Satoshi, he would then be dead, Since you're the only human
Unless
being.
Satoshi is not a human being.
True.
Here's my question. Do you think there's going to be another Block Wars?
Yes, in fact, we maybe currently, I mean, this is going deep into, Bitcoin politics, which is maybe not the focus of the show, but there's one actually happening right now. Firstly, there was already, after that first civil war between 2015 and 2017, then there was two sides, right? There was BTC and BCH. But the BCH community was more disorganized for a variety of reasons than the BTC side. So they had two further civil wars. So BCH has actually had 3 civil wars. And there is also BSV, who were the guys who essentially, quote unquote, lost the second civil war, and eCash, XCC, who, quote unquote, lost the third civil war. So BCH has had 3. BTC has only had 1, which was the one with BCH. But right now in the BTC community, there's all this debate over, quote unquote, spam and filters. And most people in that community recognize that as the most turbulent, period since the block size war itself. And in fact, just in the last week or two, we've had people in the not side actively talking about preparing for a chain split with their upgrade that they want to launch in September. So after 2 or 3 years of debate over spam, 2023, 2024, 2025, it seems like 2026 might be where things come to a head. So it's kind of like history repeating nearly a decade later, which is quite interesting to observe.
If there's a chain split, what happens to the Bitcoin that people own?
Good question. So everybody who owns a BTC, if there's a chain split, they get 1 coin on each side. So this is one of the beautiful things about it, is that if you are a part of BTC, if you're a part of Bitcoin, you are a shareholder or you're a hodler of every possible future split. So in that way, Bitcoin has already protected all of its users against any contention. Now, of course, what happens is once the split happens, without going into detail about the specifics, if there is a split and there becomes 2 chains, as soon as there is 2 chains, then people have to argue over this one's the real Bitcoin, that one's the real Bitcoin, I don't want your one, you don't want my one, so forth. And what happens is that the 2 currencies, because before there was 21 million Bitcoin, after there's effectively 42 million Bitcoin, but they're on 2 different ledgers, right? So people can sell their fake Bitcoin that they don't like or that they, dislike for whatever reason, and they can buy the other one. And so then there's a market competition between the 2 coins, the same way that BTC already, competes with Ethereum. It can then, or with Bitcoin Cash, it will then have 2 new versions, Bitcoin Filter and Bitcoin Not Filter. And each of those versions will have to compete to be the real Bitcoin. And that will be done by people buying and selling both sides, of course. But you can always just hold both and you'll win no matter what the outlook is. But of course, some people take a strong view and they will jump in first.
I would sell the fake Bitcoin.
How would you know which was the fake Bitcoin?
So it kind of seems like what Jeremy is saying is when you have a hard fork.
A chain split, not a hard fork, because a hard fork can be a chain split, but a chain split, like they're unrelated, right? Because Bitcoin has had hard forks. For instance, in 2013, there was a bug in Berkeley DB in BTC, and the whole community hard forked to a new version of BTC, and there was no chain split. BCH has a hard fork every single year, and for the last 5 years, there's been no chain split. So a hard fork doesn't have to create a chain split, but it can if there's disagreement on both sides.
This is crazy. By the way, Lion, what I get sometimes when we get technical like this is just fascinated by how amazing Bitcoin is, because unlike this old US dollar behind you, there ain't nothing you can do to upgrade or change or improve on that sheet of paper. But Bitcoin is a technology and a protocol where it might be messy when you zoom in really deep to the guys and the girls
engineering it, yeah,
who are like it can get messy, but at a high level over a long period of time, this money will prove itself to be the superior form of money to at least to paper money and all that stuff.
You can upgrade the $50 bill by making it a $51 bill. Drawing a 1 over the 0. And now you have a $51 bill.
That would be an upgrade, is to now start issuing $51 bills?
Yes.
That would just change how much money it was worth. That wouldn't make it any better. That wouldn't make it any more secure.
And you can put like a random person's face on the $51 bill.
Yeah, you could. It's just a random person's, maybe Lion's face.
Yeah.
But what Jeremy was saying right there was, if your blockchain splits into two because of some type of disagreement in the community, then it's almost like in the Avengers Endgame, where the bald lady is trying to explain to the Hulk that there's like multiple timelines that could occur, right? And so you basically have like two parallel universes, and they're kind of originating from this one moment here. And what Jeremy is saying is, I guess if the chain splits, then you hold the same amount of Bitcoin on either chain. And I guess could you just hang on and do nothing, and one chain will kind of shrivel up and die, and you'll just have the same amount on the one that ends up surviving? Or are there people who are like, you know what, I'm going to predict which one of these parallel universes is the correct one. I'm going to sell this duplicated Bitcoin over here to somebody that believes in this universe in order to buy more of this stuff and effectively increase my position by correctly predicting which parallel universe will continue and see the light of day. Is that correct?
Well, you said it exactly right. People can choose their own independent strategy. Some people might think, I just want to keep the same amount of Bitcoin no matter which side wins, and they just hold and they let it play out over time. Some people decide, well, this is an opportunity. If I can be on the right side, I can sell from the quote unquote losing side and buy onto the winning side. And some people, like for instance, me at the time of the split, right? I had Bitcoin, so I got BTC and BCH, and I instantly dumped all of my BTC for BCH. I thought they would be economically the winner, and I was wrong about that, at least in the short term. But I did it anyway. I wouldn't have cared whether about the economics, because I ideologically believed that BCH was the right path for Bitcoin. And that was one way that I could signal my support, on the free market. So some people can choose to swap some to this other side. Some people swap all of it to the other side, and some people just hold both. So it's a very interesting moment, albeit very chaotic, for Bitcoiners at the moment of the split.
When the block wars were going on, what Jeremy was telling us was that there was a group of people who felt like Satoshi had kind of already lined things out pretty nicely. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then there was a group of people who were like, look, man, if Bitcoin is going to become the world's money, then people are going to have to transact on it. They're not going to want to wait around for a 10-minute block to figure itself out, which could lead to a couple of blocks needing to go through in order for who's going to do that? We need to make a bigger block so we can get more transactions in per block. Kind of like Jeremy said, hey, this highway is congested. Let's make some more lanes. Now, what you told us, Jeremy, is that at the time, ideologically, you said, this is the correct pathway. We're going to need to be able to handle more transactions in each 10-minute block if we want this sucker to scale. Other people said, no, it's okay for it to not scale. We'll do some high-value transactions on the network. We will build a second layer on top, like the Lightning Network, to handle more transactions. And, I came up on the Simply Bitcoin boys in 2024, Nico and Opti. Whenever they talked about the block wars, when I was first learning about Bitcoin, they taught me that, Roger Ver and some dude in Asia basically poured all of their Bitcoin into Bitcoin Cash to prop it up in the early days and make people believe that it was in fact the true Bitcoin. And since then, Bitcoin, my Bitcoin, BTC, continuing to go up and up and up. Bitcoin Cash hanging out in the several $100 range effectively means that Bitcoiners were correct and Bitcoin Cash people were incorrect.
It's like stock. It's like bonds.
Like bonds not returning very much.
Yeah.
Right. We play a board game called Stocks and Bonds that's like
Very
literally
good.
from 100 years ago and has like a super old dude on the cover. But we learned when we play that game that the bonds don't really return anything, but some of the good stocks do. So like those bonds, the Bitcoin Cash hasn't done much since then, but Bitcoin has. Do you know, that's how it's been characterized to me. Do you feel like Bitcoin Cash is the correct choice and will, like, what do you think is going to happen to Bitcoin? What do you think is going to happen to Bitcoin Cash?
Yes. So, I mean, what you said is mostly correct. I think sometimes people, have a little bit of an unfair framing of it in that they say that, Roger was trying to take over things and Jihan was the other guy you mentioned. They were simply just prominent Bitcoiners at the time who happened to have a large platform and, of course, had their own views on how things should go down. Now, they have been sort of ironically like crucified, character assassinated in hindsight. But if things had turned out differently, perhaps it would have been the other way around, perhaps people like Greg Maxwell or Adam Back or Peter Todd, who were big on the small block side would be the ones receiving so much, public ridicule as a result, let's say. Now, ironically, as we just talked about, the worm is starting to turn against those guys right now in 2026 as part of the ongoing disputes in BTC. But regardless, what you said is essentially correct. The Roger and Jihan certainly sold some of their BTC for BCH because they believed that was the way forward. And the market has, at least so far, voted heavily against BCH. Now, I'm not overly concerned about that. Certainly, it is a large problem. But what it meant was that a lot of the Bitcoin, the BCH, has been redistributed. People from BTC who sold their coins, they became not involved in the project and they forgot about it. Whereas people like me who were more interested in it bought more of it. And especially over time, you can no longer buy, unless you buy coins from before 2017, you can't buy coins anymore before they're split, right? You have to buy either BTC or BCH, or you can buy both, but you can't buy them linked like they were before the split, right? So over time, the communities have now started diverging because each side has its own, just the same way as America and Britain. America was started by people leaving Britain who at the time had fairly similar opinions, and then they had one small difference, and now Americans and British are very different, right? So in the same way, BCH now is quite a different community in some respects to the BTC community. And I think that the BCH community will be able to turn around the ship on the free market, but it's just going to take us a little while. And I mean, we're doing okay, actually. We've certainly had a terrible run the first 5 years, I think. But now for the last 3 or 4 years, BCH is actually up against BTC. So even though BTC has been increasing against the US dollar, BCH has been increasing against BTC, which is the first time that that's sustainably happened since the split. And I think that's likely to continue if Bitcoiners say zoom out, if you zoom out long enough, but that remains to be seen. That comes down to the efforts of the BCH community in growing a faster and better form of Bitcoin than the BTC community. And I'm very happy that there is both options because people can, of course, look into both things, decide which they like. They can own one, they can own the other, they can own both. They can be part of both communities. There's many, many people who are in the BCH community who used to be in the BTC community or who are, have a foot in both camps. That's fine. Of course, Bitcoin is all about freedom to choose. That's the whole point.
So you used to live in Canberra.
Yes. I was born there, born and raised Canberra.
Born and raised Canberra. Okay. I remember years ago, it might have even been 2017, but it was certainly within the past 5 to 8 years. Some organization did this gigantic global study where they looked at every single thing that might go into living in a city. How much does it cost to live there? How much can you expect to earn if you live there? What are the crime rates like? What are the school systems like? What can be done in the general area? It was a big old study with many, many data points that they collected. And they came out with the number one place in the world to live. And I remember this study because my city, Raleigh, came in number 2 in the world for best place to live. Not New York City, not San Francisco, not Madrid, London. Raleigh had this beautiful mixture of stuff that makes it a great place to live. The number 1 place to live in the world was Canberra.
Really? Okay.
And I remember being like, what is this place? And I was like, oh, it's in Australia, but it's not Sydney. That's wild. That's the only time we really know in America is Sydney. Some people can maybe throw Melbourne at you, but that's the full limit of cities that we know that exist in Australia. So I had to look up Canberra, greatest place in the world to live, but you left.
Yes.
Right? Now, why did you leave?
Well, what you got to understand about Canberra is the capital of Australia, right? It's very small and it's not very well known, but it's the capital city. And it's also an artificial city. It's was founded in, I think, maybe 1917, if I'm remembering my history right. There was no Canberra before that, but Sydney and Melbourne were arguing over who was going to be the capital of Australia. And so they thought, let's create a fresh city in the middle. And they had some guys, Burke and Wills, walk from Sydney to Melbourne, and they found a spot in the middle and they said, brilliant, let's start a new city here. It will be the capital. Now, Canberra as a place, architecturally, it's actually quite similar to Washington, D.C. I went to Washington last year. So if you know Washington, a lot of, monuments, a lot of national museums. It's got some nice water features, a lot of parks, a lot of people riding bikes, that kind of stuff. If you imagine that, but scaled down about, 50 to 100 times, maybe you get what is Canberra. Now, because Canberra is this artificial city and it's also the home of the government, what that means is that virtually all of the adult population either works in the government or they are contractors for the government. Mm-hmm. Over half of the adult population is either directly employed or indirectly employed by the government. Now, as you might know, in Bitcoiners generally don't like the government, and I was no different. So I kind of grew up in the crucible of one of the most government-controlled places on Earth. And as you can imagine, at a certain point, once I was able to leave, I decided that wasn't my vibe.
Well, Canberra, artificially created to be excellent and has, in fact, been proven such.
Yes.
Bitcoin, artificially created to be excellent and, in fact, has been proven such.
Exactly.
But you moved on from both. So
Yes.
Are you just somebody that has to move on, Jeremy?
Well, I'm certainly got a contrarian streak, and I think that's very important. It's something you'll see in a lot of especially the very early Bitcoiners were people who were innovative, forward thinking, because not only did you have to be contrarian to see that Bitcoin would be a success when it had much less evidence of it, but you also had to be able to persist through the social pressure to, sell it. What's this stupid project? Nobody cares about it. Like I said, being isolated for some people. So you need to have that kind of core of contrarianism. And to this day, many of the most influential people in Bitcoin are of all kinds, BTC, BCH, whatever, are very, contrarian, sometimes to their detriment, sometimes overly so.
So, Lion, after listening to Jeremy's case for Bitcoin Cash, are you going to stick with Bitcoin? Are you going to leave Bitcoin behind and convert everything you got into Bitcoin Cash? Are you going to pick up a little bit of Bitcoin Cash in case Jeremy turns out to be right?
I'll send him some.
He's going to send you some.
I'd say I would stay with Bitcoin. I mean, if Bitcoin Cash is still in the hundreds and Bitcoin is up in the 10,000, I think I'd stay with Bitcoin.
But what if Jeremy's right and you can get Bitcoin Cash for a couple of $100 and it goes to 87,000 the same way Bitcoin did?
Drive
right?
$100?
I mean,
I don't think so.
You don't. I mean,
I'll send you 100. We'll do it after the show.
$100 worth of Bitcoin Cash for Lion.
I mean, I'll take that.
He'll take it.
Legend. All right.
He'll take it.
Welcome back to Bitcoin.
Welcome back to Bitcoin, dude. He thinks Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin. And I mean, and what do you do with the Bitcoin Satoshi's vision, guys? I mean, you know, like for me, it's like, dude, how can I say this?
It's a fractal. That's the ironic thing about it. The same way that the BTC community often sees the BCH community, they think you're smaller, you got on the wrong track, you guys have been misguided down some weird path, your project isn't as successful. That's the thinking of the BCH community to the BTC community, the BTC community to the BCH community. That's the same way that the BCH community sees the BSV community. It's kind of like, good riddance. Thank you guys are out of here. It's not our problem anymore. Not my monkeys, not my circus. You guys can go off and fail and struggle and find out you were wrong on your own. And that's ironically, that's kind of what's happened, right? Just like BCH has underperformed BTC, BSV has underperformed BCH, and that's a much longer topic we could go into about the details there. But it is very ironic. And as a BCH fan, obviously I have to laugh at that symmetry.
Yeah. Well,
you know, Dad, here's my question. Are you a Bitcoin purist?
Meaning like only Bitcoin, only
yes.
BTC. 100%. Yes.
That's me, bro. It's like, I don't know how I feel about other coins, you know?
But I mean, again, if Jeremy's going to send you $100 worth of Bitcoin Cash, which would basically be like a third of a coin at today's rates, I mean, it's almost like when we offer a pre-coiner $50 worth of Bitcoin, they're like, you know what?
Exactly.
Whatever. I'll take it for free. Because if it goes to nothing, who cares? But if it goes somewhere, that's pretty sweet, right? Now, there are people in the Bitcoin community they're not going to be happy with you on my show because they're going to feel like you might, quote unquote, mislead some of my brand new Bitcoiners into the world of Bitcoin Cash, where their investments may not perform or could even go all the way down to zero. You know, what do you have to say to the brand new Bitcoiner? Do you think my Bitcoin is just straight up wrong and they should avoid it and go straight to Bitcoin Cash? Would you advise a little bit of both? Like, what do you have to say to the brand new Bitcoiner? Because you started with Bitcoin and have followed the chain that you believe is still Bitcoin. What's that parting word there, Jer?
Well, you know what people sometimes say about investments or with Bitcoin, they say, don't invest more than you can afford to lose, right? The idea being that for something that is new and risky and that people don't understand that well, they shouldn't put a lot of money into it, you know, because they're likely to get down the wrong path. I like to modify that phrase, and I say about BCH, about Bitcoin in general, my phrase is don't invest more than you understand, which is that I think for BTC or for BCH, people listening to this show should simply look into the alternatives. They can follow my content, they can read up all the information, they can dig back through the history, they can ask as many people as they want. And once they feel comfortable or interested in BCH, maybe they get a little bit of it. Maybe as they understand more, they increase their investment. If they already understand BTC and that's working for them, I wouldn't tell them to change away from it. If they understand that, that's the most important thing. People should only invest in what they understand. So I'm not here trying to mislead or do anything. I'm simply just providing more information. The same way that many people find BTC and when they first hear about it, they think it's a scam. They don't understand it. It's very confusing. They don't want to hear about it. But then after they get past a certain tipping point of, you know, information or new learning, new experiences, whatever it is, suddenly it reverses and they think, oh, wow, I I kind of remember how I used to be when I was on the other side of the fence, now that I have this journey, I've seen things in a different light. It's kind of the same way with BCH. I am one of the few that joined BCH sort of from fresh, as you might put it, but for everybody else, usually they have to find BCH first by understanding BTC, and the BCH and BTC communities share a lot. It's the same concept of having 21 million, of onboarding people non-violently to escape the fiat system, to solve their purchasing power being debased and so forth. Really, the difference is kind of in the details. Like I said, it is increasing over time. So now there's actually quite a lot you can learn about Bitcoin in general by looking at BCH as a kind of alternate universe experiment, like you were talking about. Learning about BCH can only help you to make BTC better if that's what you prefer.
All right. Where can our Satillionaires go if they do want to hear more about Bitcoin Cash on your podcast?
Yes. So bitcoincashpodcast.com is the website. I have FAQs there. I have a start guide that goes through everything, a lot of which your listeners will already probably understand, but also some specific to BCH, and also a bit of background about me and my perspective. Of course, there's also the podcast, which is pretty heavy going, I think. So people who want to tune into that definitely can, but it's on, Spotify and YouTube and everywhere if you just look up the Bitcoin Cash podcast. But all the links are on the website. So just go to bitcoincashpodcast.com, browse around a little bit, read the start guide, maybe read some of the FAQs, and see what you think. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's a very enlightening experience, even if a little confusing to start with.
Well, Deber, why don't we flip over to our Buy the Dip moment by Ithaca Hummus. Ithaca Hummus reminds us to buy the dip. Lion's just sitting there like, this is Lion's favorite part. He loves hummus. So let's get you some of this roasted red pepper here today, Lion. Okay. Dude,
Okay, I got
that's
one.
literally a speck.
I got one.
That's literally a speck. Hold that up.
Not too hungry today.
That's literally no hummus at all. Okay. Dude, let me come here and get a fat glob for the people. Okay, this stuff is delicious, man. Are you ready? We'll serve it your taste buds here today, Jared. Cheers. Take the bite with the hummus on it. Dude.
It looks good. It looks good.
That was a speck of hummus. Can you even taste it?
Yeah.
You need to get like a fat glob on there, Lime.
I already had a fat glob of this one.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I was hosting.
Dude, that is so tasty. That could never be me only taking a tiny, tiny, tiny speck on the corner of my woven wheat cracker.
Man of restraint.
IthacaHummus.com will show you where you can buy that if you're in America. So next time you're in America, you'll have to grab some. All right, now it's time for us. So Jeremy, we already know that you feel Bitcoin Cash is superior to Bitcoin, but now we need to figure out whether you think Bitcoin is superior to US dollars, aka cash, right?
Of course it is. No question.
I think we already know the answer, but we're just going to test. We're just going to test, okay?
So the question is, do you want this or 56,797 Satoshis?
I'll take the sats every day. Proof of work, baby. Let's go.
Proof of work. Okay. High five. Now you bring our show scoreboard to 179 that have stacked the Satoshis, along with 9 that have chosen the cash. Now, when we send you these 57,000 Satoshis, what are you going to do with them?
I'm going to use sideshift.ai and convert them to BCH. I mean, I think BTC is a superior currency to the dollar. Of course, it's backed by proof of work, limited supply, all of that. But my whole economy is essentially operating in BCH, and BTC is, of course, far easier to switch for BCH than dollars are. So I'll take that every time.
Wild. So that's going to turn into BCH for him. So We ask each of our guests if they would be willing to come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love. This is going to be a great year. That will be past September, right? When there's going to be this split in potentially in the BTC chain, and I love that stuff. I'm very happy to be a BCH correspondent, of course.
You're going to come back on in 9 months, and maybe Bitcoin has some kind of turmoil or upheaval. Bitcoin Cash is chilling, doing its thing, and you're going to come back on like, bam, I told you so. Here's what I do want you to do. Track how much Bitcoin Cash you get when you convert these Satoshis over.
Will do.
Along with
the amount of
and then
BTC
when
sats.
you come back on in 9, we'll be able to say, okay, now, was that a good choice? Was that a bad choice? Obviously, we've seen on this show that 9 months, even with Bitcoin, some guests have come back and it's been worth less. But what we tell them is, hey, just keep stacking, dude. It's going to be fine.
DCA.
Might be the same thing for you then, but it'll be interesting just to see how those two things perform against one another. Sad Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guest views are their own. By the way, subscribe for more videos like this. If you do, you might win 2 million Satoshis. We're going to do a giveaway when we reach 10,000 subscribers. We might even have a few to do before the 10,000 subscriber mark, which is kind of interesting, but we're still working on that. So subscribe, like, comment, share, boost our signal, right? Because we are on the frontier between the 3% who have Bitcoin and the 97% that don't. If you are a regular listener, we need you to boost so that YouTube knows what to do with our channel, because they're like, who do we show this content to, right? It's like coming from the 3% for the 97%. YouTube's like, I know how to show content for the 3% to the 3% and content for the 97% to the 97%. How do I show content from the 3% to the 97%? It's through you guys.
It's easy. You just show the content from the 3% to the 97%.
Yeah, but YouTube is like trying to program an algorithm to do that on behalf of itself. Since we're uploading 1 billion gigabytes of video content a day, it's trying to figure that out automatically. So use the hype feature if you can. If you see that, get us hyped up to try to boost that signal, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks so much for listening, for whistling. I don't know what that is. Is that whistling while you listen, Deber?
No.
Put it in the comments what you think whistling is, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.